Smartphone video has come so far, it's checked off almost every box on a filmmaker's wish list. Apple, Samsung and Vivo Log, OpenGate Capture, ProRes RAW on iPhone, AVP and MC RAW on Android. The gap between phones and traditional cameras has never been closer, but there's still something missing on both: the film look. So in this video, I'm going to show you how I get it for Apple Log, Samsung Log and MotionCam RAW, and how to take your video from this to this in just a few simple steps. For over a decade, I've been chasing the most convincing film emulation I could find. I've used everything: Film Convert, Dehancer, Resolve's Film Look Creator, solid tools, but none of them felt completely authentic. Then I found two plugins for Resolve that finally bridged that gap: Filmbox Pro, which models film stocks, halation and grain in a way that actually looks and feels like film, and Scatter, which adds diffusion filter emulation that behaves like the real thing, adding bloom to your highlights and softness that counters digital sharpening. Together, they have become essential to my workflow. They are expensive, but worth the investment if you care about your image quality. And with native support for Apple and Samsung Log and MotionCam RAW compatibility, they are incredibly powerful tools for smartphone filmmakers chasing the film look. In this video, I'll walk you through the exact process step by step on how I get the film look for smartphone video, and at the end, I'll do a side-by-side so you can see how Filmbox compares with Film Convert and Dehancer. Let's dive into Resolve. I have 3 clips here that we're going to apply Filmbox to, and I'll create a different film look for each. The first is captured on the iPhone 17 Pro in Apple Log 2. The second clip is captured on the Samsung S26 Ultra in Samsung Log at 120 frames per second in APV. And my third clip is from the incredible Vivo X200 Ultra, recorded using MotionCam Pro in CinemaDNG. For all of these shots, I'm going to apply Filmbox Pro to the end node. Don't worry that it doesn't look correct yet. That's because we haven't specified the camera source. And on my first node, I'm going to apply Scatter, which will give me my diffusion filter emulation. And we want Scatter at the start because it is meant to mirror using a real filter at the time of capture, so it should really be at the start of your imaging chain. I'll disable it for now. If you need to make corrections, place your corrector node between Scatter and Filmbox. I'll just copy and paste this basic node tree to my other clips. So starting with Apple Log, let's apply a classic Kodak Vision 3 film look to this clip. Under Filmbox Pro, the very first thing we need to do is select the correct source for our camera's log profile. It defaults to Arri Log C, but from the drop-down, I'll select Apple Log 2. If you shot in Apple Log 1, you would select that instead. And instantly we have a stunning Kodak Vision 3 emulation complete with 35mm film grain and Halation 2. And under Display Color Space at the bottom, you can see that Filmbox takes us by default from our log profile to Rec. 709 Gamma 2.4, meaning it's instantly ready to publish with no other color management required. The next thing I'm going to do is reveal the camera settings, enable it, and boost exposure by half a stop. Next, let's move down to the negative module, which provides access to the elements that impart the photometric and spatial characteristics of the film negative. Under gauge, it defaults to 35mm, but we could select the 16mm preset for a softer and grainier look, or 8mm, which is softer and grainier still, and you'll notice that the 8mm adds gate weave too, which we can of course turn off separately. And for the finest grain and least softening, we can select 65mm. YouTube compression kills all subtlety, so while I'd usually use 35mm, I'll stick with 16mm so the effect is more obvious. Under stock, I'll select 50D, which will pull back the grain, and this is also obvious in the waveform. Under halation, I can disable this completely or manually override the preset, and for example change the gauge to 35mm to make the effect more subtle, and enable Aura to simulate a motion picture negative stripped of its anti-halation backing, but I'll leave this off for this shot. We can dive in and fine-tune our grain, but right now I'm happy with the results. The only other thing I want to change for my Vision 3 film look is under the Lab module. I'll enable it, then I'm going to increase the richness and vibrance just a tad, and now I'm really happy with this look. Now, all that's left to do is enable scatter. Again, we need to select the correct source of Apple log. I'll use the Hollywood Blackmagic filter emulation and choose 1/8 strength. And we're done. We have taken our Apple log video from this to this in just a few simple steps. Next, let's pull up our Samsung log video, and for this look, I'm going to use a simplified version of Filmbox called Filmbox Looks, which is a collection of film look presets with more limited controls that can actually be purchased standalone for much less than Filmbox Pro. But if you're using Filmbox Pro, it is available within it and has some very cool features. Again, under source, I'll need to set this to Samsung Log Rec 2020, then scroll to the very bottom and click Switch to Filmbox Looks. We can enable camera and apply any exposure or white balance adjustments if needed. The white balance is off, so I can correct that easily here. Under the Looks family, you have 11 categories, and in each category, multiple looks. We can just click the Look Forward button to move through them. It will automatically move to the next category once you get to the last look. Now, I really like this moonlit look. Filmbox Looks offers a much more limited set of controls, allowing you to tweak contrast, vibrance, halation, and grain strength. I'll bring back grain and halation just a bit, and there is our before and after. Now let's enable scatter. I need to change source to Samsung log, and I'll dial that in. And there we have it. A really nice film look in no time at all using Filmbox Looks, which is available as a standalone plugin at a much lower price than Filmbox Pro. But what's cool about looks inside of Filmbox Pro is if you find a preset you love, like Moonlit, you can apply it to Filmbox Pro and then see the exact recipe for it and make some granular tweaks until it's perfect. And lastly, let's apply Filmbox to my raw CinemaDNG clip that I captured on the Vivo using MotionCam Pro. And because this is DNG RAW, I'm going to disable the Filmbox node and start under the Camera Raw tools in Resolve. I'll change decode using to clip, and then I'll change my color space to Blackmagic Design. And because this is true raw video, I can enable highlight recovery and bring back a lot of information. And I'll also correct my white balance, which was way off. If I enable Filmbox and then select BMD Film 4.6K, you can see it doesn't quite look correct. What I need to do is apply a color space transform at the start of my node tree. So I'll click on the scatter node, press Shift-S to apply a serial node before it, and drag over a color space transform. For input, I'll select Blackmagic Design Wide Gamut Gen 4.5, and for input gamma, Blackmagic Design Film. Then for output color space, I'll choose BMD Wide Gamut Gen 4.5 again, and for output gamma, I'll choose Blackmagic Design Film 4.6K. Now Filmbox is getting what it expects. Now for this look, I'm going to start by selecting Photo Color C41 for my film system. Then under the negative category, I'll choose Cine, and let's go with CineStill 400. Next, I'll jump down to Lab, enable it, and start by neutralizing the look. I'll set this to 1. Again, I'll give richness and vibrance a slight boost, and for this look, I really want to increase the density. And lastly, I'll increase contrast and push-pull just a bit so we get a really punchy film look. Now there is just one more thing I want to do under halation. As you can see, Aura is enabled as part of this preset, and it really does wonders for the highlights. I'll add just a touch more strength to bring in some red to the halation. And lastly, I'm going to change the halation gauge from 35mm to 16mm. How nice does that look? Here is the before, and here is the after. And the last step, I'll enable scatter, set the correct source, and I'm going to pull back the intensity for this shot, and here is our final image. So that's how to give Apple log, Samsung log, and MotionCam Pro the film look with Filmbox. But what if the film stock emulations don't fit the style of your video? For example, I'm typically making educational content for YouTube, and Kodak Vision 3 isn't something that fits. Thankfully, you can use your favorite LUTs with Filmbox and just access the halation and grain while bypassing the film stock emulation. I'll jump back to my Apple log clip. I'll disable Filmbox for now. And on the node immediately before it, I'll apply the gloat LUT for Apple log, which is what I use for the majority of my videos. Instantly, it looks amazing, especially with scatter diffusion. Next, I'll enable Filmbox, and as you'd expect, it looks wrong. The first thing I'm going to do is change the mode from full emulation to just halation and grain only. This bypasses the film stock and now only applies grain and halation, but you'll notice something wrong in the waveform. My black point has been raised. The reason for this is because the source is still set to Apple log 2, but in the node before it, I applied a LUT that transforms Apple log to Rec 709. So under source, I'd need to select Rec 709 Gamma 2.4, and everything is back where it should be. We can dive in and adjust our grain. Again, I'll choose 16mm and pull the strength and saturation down just a bit. Then I can tweak halation or disable this entirely, and that is how you use Filmbox for grain and halation only. Now let's put Filmbox and Scatter up against Film Convert and Dehancer so you can see how it compares, and let me know in the comments which you think looks best. I hope this video helped. If it did, I always appreciate you leaving a like and hearing from you in the comments. Everything is linked in the pinned comment. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.